My daughter crashed my wedding, demanding an apology for ruining her life. I never imagined our first words in years would be a showdown. I suppose at that age it's natural to want someone to blame, and my ex made sure the target was me. She told my daughter I was selfish, that I'd abandoned them, that I didn't care about our family anymore. I tried to explain, to reach out, but the damage was done. My daughter stopped speaking to me, shutting me out entirely. Over the years, I'd held on a hope that we could mend things, but time passed, and she remained distant. Then, just as I thought I'd turn a corner with this new chapter in my life, she showed up at my wedding. She was angry, demanding an apology, one she felt I owed her, though I'm still grappling with how we got to this point. None of it was true, but in the heat of a divorce, the truth tends to get trampled by emotions. At first, I thought it was a phase. I thought my daughter would come around once she had time to process things, once the dust settled. But instead, she pulled away. She stopped answering my calls, ignored my texts, and when I showed up at her school to try to talk to her, she told me to leave her alone. "You ruined our family," she said to me one day, eyes filled with cold, hard anger. I tried to explain that it wasn't like that things between her mom and me just weren't working, that the divorce didn't mean I was abandoning her. But she wasn't having it. She had already made up her mind, or more accurately, her mother had made it up for her. The next few years were hell. While my ex spun her narrative, my daughter took to social media to publicly drag me. She made posts about how I had destroyed her life, how I was dead to her, and she even shared private details of our family arguments that were twisted beyond recognition. Friends reached out, shocked at what they were seeing. I didn't even recognize my own kid anymore. I could have defended myself, but what good would that have done? I wasn't going to get into a war with my own daughter online. I just had to take the hits. Eventually, I stopped looking at her posts altogether because it hurt too much. Watching the bond we once had get reduced to nothing, was worse than anything I had imagined. It felt like I had lost both my marriage and my daughter in one fell swoop. Years passed. I didn't hear from her. Holidays were the worst. Sitting alone, knowing she was with her mom, probably still believing the worst about me. I thought about reaching out again and again, but every attempt was met with either silence or outright hostility. So I let her be. I told myself that she'd come back when she was ready, if ever. And I started to rebuild my life. I met someone, a woman who understood what I had been through, who didn't judge me for the mistakes I made during my marriage. We clicked in a way I hadn't felt in years, and for the first time in a long time, I felt happy. I even felt a little guilty about it, given everything that had happened with my daughter, but I knew I deserved to move on. When we got engaged, I didn't expect my daughter to care. I hadn't heard from her in so long that I assumed she didn't give a damn about what I did with my life anymore. So we planned a small wedding, just close friends and family, my side of the family who had stuck by me through the whole mess, and her family who welcomed me with open arms. It was supposed to be a day of joy, simple, intimate, free of drama. That was until the day of the wedding. The ceremony was beautiful, the weather was perfect, the vows were heartfelt, and for the first time in years, I felt a sense of peace. But as the reception began and we were about to share our first dance, I saw her, my daughter, standing at the entrance in a dress that looked more like she was here to steal the spotlight than to witness the wedding. Her face was a mix of anger and something else. I was stunned. I hadn't invited her, not because I didn't want her there, but because I genuinely thought she wouldn't want to come. She had made her feelings clear for years, and yet, here she was at the most important day of my new life, unannounced and uninvited. She walked straight up to me, ignoring the shocked looks from the guests, and hissed, "I can't believe you didn't invite me to your wedding. You're seriously going to do this without apologizing?" I felt like I'd been slapped. Apologize for what? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm, though my heart was racing. "For everything," she snapped. "For the divorce, for ruining our family, for cutting me out of your life." Cutting her out of my life? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You haven't spoken to me in years," I said, incredulous. "You blocked me out. I tried to reach you. Do you remember that? You didn't want anything to do with me." She crossed her arms, her eyes narrowing, "Because you didn't fight hard enough. You gave up on me, just like you gave up on Mom." I could feel the tension in the room thickening, as people started to take notice of what was happening. I motioned for my new wife to step back, knowing this wasn't going to be a quick or easy conversation. "I didn't give up on you," I said, my voice trembling now, the weight of years of frustration and heartache boiling to the surface. "I gave you space because you made it clear that's what you wanted. I didn't want to force myself into your life if you didn't want me there." "That's such a cop-out," she spat. "You're just saying that to make yourself feel better. You should have fought harder. You should have." "What? Shown up at your door and demanded you talk to me?" I interrupted, my patience wearing thin. "How would that have helped? You were hurting, I get that, but so was I. You're not the only one who lost something in that divorce." She glared at me, and for a moment, I thought she might slap me. Instead, she took a step back, her voice lowering but no less venomous. You owe me an apology for everything, for putting me in the middle of your mess, for making me choose. I never made you choose, I said, my voice cracking now. Your mom did that. She turned you against me. Oh, don't you dare blame her, she snapped, her voice rising again. She's the only reason I survived that divorce. You were too busy moving on to care about me. That was the moment I broke. You think I moved on easily? I shouted, my voice echoing across the stunned crowd. You think it didn't kill me to lose you too? I didn't just lose my wife in that divorce. I lost my daughter. You chose to cut me out, and I respected your choice because I didn't want to hurt you more than you already were. But don't you dare stand here and act like I haven't suffered through this. I could see her falter for a moment, as if maybe, just maybe, she hadn't considered my side of things. But that moment passed quickly, and she squared her shoulders. The stubbornness that I had always admired now turned against me. So that's it then, she said, her voice cold. You're not going to apologize? I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the years between us, the love I still had for her, and the deep pain she had caused me. I'll apologize for one thing, I said softly. I'm sorry that the divorce hurt you. I'm sorry that it made you feel like you had to choose sides. But I will not apologize for trying to move on with my life when you shut me out. She stared at me for a long moment, and for the first time since this whole ordeal began, I saw something break in her. Her eyes filled with tears. But she quickly wiped them away, her face hardening again. Without another word, she turned and walked out of the reception, leaving me standing there in the middle of a stunned silence. I didn't follow her. I couldn't. I'd already spent years chasing after someone who didn't want me in her life. I wasn't about to start again. The rest of the night was a blur. My new wife was incredibly supportive, standing by me through the whole thing, and we tried to salvage what was left of the reception. But that confrontation hung over me, a reminder of the broken relationship that I wasn't sure would ever be repaired. It's been a few weeks since the wedding now, and I still haven't heard from her. Part of me wonders if I ever will, but part of me also knows that I did what I had to do, both as a father and as a person who has the right to move on. After the wedding, my wife and I went on our honeymoon. It was supposed to be a fresh start, a time to forget the pain of the past and focus on the future. But my daughter's face, her anger, her demands, it all stayed with me like a dark cloud. The hardest part wasn't her lashing out, I expected that. No, the hardest part was realizing that I had been waiting for her to come back into my life for years. And when she finally did, it was with so much hate, so much misunderstanding. It wasn't the reunion I had imagined in my head during all those lonely holidays, birthdays, and milestones I missed. I spent those first few days after the wedding questioning everything. Maybe I hadn't done enough. Maybe I should have fought harder, tried more to be in her life after the divorce. Was it really my fault that she turned on me? Did I, as she claimed, give up on her too easily? But then, my wife sat me down one evening as we watched the sunset from our hotel balcony. She looked me in the eye and said something that I needed to hear. You can't live your life trying to apologize for things that weren't your fault. She was right, and as much as it hurt to admit it, I realized that no amount of apologizing, no grand gesture, would ever undo what had happened between my daughter and me. She made her choice, just as I made mine. We both lost something, but I wasn't going to keep punishing myself for it. When we returned home, I had a voicemail waiting for me. It was my daughter, and her voice was shaking with emotion. She didn't ask for an apology this time. Instead, she told me that she needed time, more time, to process everything. She didn't say she wanted to rebuild our relationship. She didn't say she was sorry for how things had gone down at the wedding. But for the first time in years, she didn't lash out. She didn't throw blame. And maybe that was a step in the right direction. I won't lie. I'm still heartbroken. I love my daughter, and I always will. But I can't keep chasing after her, begging for forgiveness for things I didn't do. I have a new life now, a wife who loves me, and a future that, despite the pain, looks brighter than the years behind me. Maybe one day, my daughter and I will find our way back to each other. Maybe we won't, but either way, I'm done being the villain in a story I never asked to be part of. So that's where I am now, trying to move forward, even though the past keeps tugging at me. Oh, and if you've stuck around this long, feel free to subscribe if you enjoy reading about complicated family drama. Maybe next time, I'll share something less soul-crushing. But hey, life is messy, right?